I'd like to start out this video by asking you, how are you doing with our 90 days challenge? I'm sure a lot of you maybe even completely forgot that we were in the midst of that, but actually as of today, the video that I'm doing on Tuesday, we're actually at day 59 of our 90-day challenge. So maybe you need a little bit of a refresher. What was the 90-day challenge? Well, the 90-day challenge was for the next 90 days. When we started 59 days ago, there was a handful of things that we were going to do. One of those was we're not going to complain. Another one was we're going to read our Bible more. And it was kind of at the point where it was at least 10 minutes a day. We were going to work to pray with at least one person on a regular basis, and not just for meals. This was praying with someone, maybe about a prayer request. We were also going to have intentional conversations, spiritual conversations with those who are unchurched, people around us that don't know Jesus. We were going to have intentional conversations about Jesus with them. Another thing that we were going to do was that we were going to support our missionaries in some way, whether it be through encouragement, whether it be through prayer, or in giving financially. Whatever way, we were wanting to be an encouragement in that way and a support to our missions. Another thing that we had said that we would be doing during these 90 days is that we would in some way serve. And it's interesting to me that these are very appropriate to what we're experiencing, and all are very applicable to where we're at. And it actually got me to thinking a little bit about what can we do? How can we impact the world around us? And as a matter of fact, if you remember on Sunday, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that our citizenship is not here. Our citizenship is in heaven, and it's where we will be, and how we need to live with that, in that reality, and how we need to function within a sense of anticipation for heaven, and to live with a sense of purpose for now. But we're asked to live in a strange place, in a strange time. And how do we do that? How can we be that person? Well, it got me to thinking about the story of Daniel and the book of Daniel. And actually, for the next few weeks, I would really like to take these moments of our midweek videos and discuss some of the things about Daniel, and more importantly, about how Daniel lived with excellence in exile. You see, we're living in a time, we're living in a place that is not our home. So we too, in a sense, are living in exile. And so how can we live excellent for God in this time that we find ourselves living, in this world that we live in? Well, what was interesting, as I was looking at Daniel chapter 1, we see a really neat story. This is the beginning of it all for Daniel. This is the first time that we see him. And actually what happens, if you read verse 2 of Daniel chapter 1, it clearly says that God gave the children of Israel over to the Babylonians. See, they were living the way that they wanted to. And so God needed to get their attention. So he sent them into exile. And all of a sudden, everything changed. Everything was taken away. Everything was gone. Daniel's home, he was taken out of his home. He lost his identity. The king, even Nebuchadnezzar, changed his name. He made him become the culture of the Babylonians. They had to learn literature of the Babylonians. They had to learn their culture. Everything was taken away from them, and they had to live in this life of exile, serving the king of Babylon. But yet we see a very interesting story in the midst of this. It would have been really easy for Daniel to simply go, this is terrible, this is wrong, this should not be happening to us, and I'm not going to do anything that I don't want to do. But what is really interesting here is what happens. We read in verse 8, actually, that Daniel determines not to defile himself while in exile. And we see in this first chapter, the way that that goes about is that the king was was actually giving them food that I think if we were to look at it in our culture today, we'd probably go, wow, that's really good food. But it was going against what Daniel believed to be God's purpose for their life. And so Daniel said, I'm determined not to defile myself. And so something interesting happens. Daniel proposes a test. But we can see something about Daniel in this proposal that's really important, because it wasn't just that Daniel was going to be belligerent. He didn't want to stand up and just stand for stand's sake. He had a purpose behind this. First of all, one of the things that we see in this test is Daniel did it respectfully. He went to the guard and he didn't promote it. He didn't cause a walkout or a protest or anything of that nature. He went directly to the one that was in authority over him and he said, I have an idea and I would ask respectfully, would you do this? And he said, for the next 10 days, would you allow me and a few of my friends to have simple vegetables and water, not the king's food? So he did it respectfully. But the second thing that we see is he also did it in a way of submission. Because if you look at what he said, this is what we would like. However, if it doesn't work to the exact specifications that you think it should be done, or if we don't look any better after the 10 days than everybody else who's eaten the king food, then we will submit to what you see is appropriate. You see, he wasn't going to just stand and say, we're going to do it my way, or I'm not playing your game. His reality was, respectfully I ask, but I'm willing to submit. But then there was a third part of this, a part of Daniel that goes even beyond the respect and the submission, was his idea of complete dependency upon God. You see, Daniel came to the place where he said, I trust my God, and I trust in his plan so much that I am willing to follow his lead. He trusted God for everything. We're going to see that even more in the weeks to come. But even in this one scenario, Daniel's thing was, if it doesn't go this way, then I trust that God is in that too. And God will lead me in that. You know, I find that sometimes it's easy for me to focus on what I don't have. Living in exile means there's a lot of things that I don't have. Living with excellence in exile means that I live with a respect for those that God has placed in my life. That I live in submission to what God has called us to do while we live in exile, but to live with complete dependency upon Him. Friends, we live in exile as foreigners, as strangers. Our home is not here. Our home is in heaven. But in the time that we have here, we have the incredible opportunity to lift high the name of Jesus. We can be excellent in exile.